Well, hello everybody on the internet. Welcome to the latest in a long series of Mondays. It is the 28th of January, 2019. Oh man, already a 12th of the new year has passed. I've barely learned to say 2019. Where does the time go? Anyway, it's been a fairly productive week in painting. It's still winter here, still dark out, which means the lighting is kind of iffy, but I hope you can see this Wyvern that I have painted in rather dark muted colors, because that is the paint scheme which appears in most of the illustrations, but it's kind of red and bony, and this is the smaller of the Wyverns. This here is the big cheese. Let's see if we can get him into shot. He's quite impressive, I think. Ah, there you can see the wings catch the light a little bit. And yeah, there's a lot of texture on these wings, more than on the others. His tail is kind of folded under him, so in a sneaky way to make a base, so to speak. And yeah, they turned out alright. Like I said, I'm always a bit concerned when miniatures come out very dark, but some creatures are supposed to be dark in their coloration. It's just the way it is. I try to add in some highlights. Like make the edges of these scales a bit brighter. Not sure if that, nah, they don't look that bright, but oh well. Not everything has to be cartoony. So, those are the metal models that I finished this week. I have also painted a bunch of bones and stuff. In the bones category, we first have these lions, which, as I mentioned, I decided to paint as ghost lions. They're supposed to be really just, well, spectral lions. And, they're not actual translucent plastic, so I had to make do with what I had. And what I had was fluorescent paint. All of this is Vallejo's fluorescent blue plus some white. Just plain old white. No, they don't have fluorescent white. And yeah, and I kept the varnish satin instead of going all matte with it, just to give it a little bit more sheen, perhaps to seem like they're glowing a little bit. And I tried to put a bit more blue into the eye sockets, but not overdo it. And yeah, hopefully they get across the idea. And coming in last, but certainly not least, we have my collection of mummies. New mummies. These are some armored and armed mummies. And in the back we have some mummy specialists. So I went with, oops, sorry, mostly blue with a little orange in the color scheme here, and of course the bandages and such. And here is the mummy captain. Sorry, I can't really fit all into frame here in a good way. Here is him, and this is, I suspect it's more like a lich, really, not a mummy, because he's not wrapped in bandages in the same way, and his body, he's got like a skull head, but a body that is not actually skeletal, but just really desiccated, and not, again, not with mummy wrappings on it, but something else. So I painted him slightly differently, but yeah, he required more variety. Now I did something new here, which it didn't work out exactly the way I thought it would. You see, the problem with mummy miniatures, is that a lot of them, like these guys, are not fully covered in their wrappings. A lot of them have like open bits where the bone is showing through. And so the answer, the question becomes, how do you differentiate? How do you, because mummy wrappings are traditionally linen, at least some neutral colored cloth. How do you differentiate in 28mm scale between linen and bone? And the answer is pretty much you can't. It's pretty much impossible to visually tell them apart. So what I've done is, this is, you know, I've said to myself, maybe these are fresh mummies. So the bone has some more, in some of these guys, like this one, it's obvious there's still some muscle left on the bones. And so I added some blood effects. Try to make it look like raw meat showing through instead of just bone, where the wrappings aren't covering. And the way I did that was I used my traditional blood effect, namely Tamiya Clear Red, except I used it before varnishing. I mean, normally when I add the Tamiya Clear Red as a blood effect, I do it the very last thing I do, even after varnishing. So it's lying on top of everything else. In this case, I put it down while I was doing my regular painting, and then I varnished it first, you know, gloss and then matte, as always. And the idea was that would dull it down a bit, not leave it as shiny as it usually is. It kind of worked on this guy, but not on the troops as much. It looks like really, really fresh blood, at least to my naked eye. But oh well, you gotta make these experiments and see how they turn out. It's not what I imagine it would be, but it's in effect. It's something. And yeah, hopefully it looks dramatic. Yeah. Anyway, that was a good collection of stuff. Like 11 minis completed this week. I mean, 9 of them were bones that were more or less speed painted, so not a big deal, but oh well. I don't think the coming week will be as productive because I have a bunch of other stuff to do in the evenings and weekend this coming week. But well, let's have a look at stuff in the pipe in any case. So, out of the stuff that was started last week, these 3 guys did not get finished. They are started though. There's a bit of work done. There's some metallics. There's some blues and oranges. Do they look familiar? Yes, it's the same exact colors as were used on the mummies. And the reason I'm not afraid to use the same colors on so many disparate minis, both the mummies and the sorceress and the pirate. I mean, this would look odd if there was a scenario where a pirate and a sorceress were fighting mummies. You'd ask, why is everybody dressed the same? But in reality, I don't think that these minis will actually be hitting the table at the same time, anytime, you know? They belong to different scenarios, so to speak. So that's why, you know, I had the paint on my palette, why not use it? Waste not, want not. That's my philosophy about paint. Once I put a color down on my palette, I try to use it for as much as I can, because, you know, the thing about a drop of bottles is that you quite often squeeze out more than you need. And so I don't want to let it go to waste, and thus I look around at my models in the works and I think, where else can I use this orange, for example? Yeah. But, you know, these are bones, these I speed paint them reasonably fast, so I'm pretty sure these will be done next week. Here we see all the new stuff I've started prepping. The giant weasel even has some base coats on it. very rough. I'm going to paint it as a red weasel. I mean, when I searched for weasel pictures online, most of them that came up were either bright red or kind of a reddish brown color. I haven't seen many weasels in real life, so I'm just going to go by pictures, and because it's a cool color. This is it's a paint I haven't used much before, actually. This is a terracotta from Vallejo Game Color. The owlbear, as I've hinted, I'm painting off the base. I should probably remove, there's some sticky tack here under the pegs, and that I use as masking. It's coming off anyway, so I might as well remove it. And as I mentioned, I'm painting the stuff that's going to be hard to get to first. The frog demon, intimidating pose. The armored ogre, he looks like what you might expect. And the fire giant jailer, which I primed all black because he's going to be pretty dark. I mean, he's going to be, the skin is kind of a dark gray, and the armor is like a dark iron. So I thought a black primer or very, very dark gray, as the case may be, would suit him. Now, I have assembled him fully, even these little bits in the back, which, you know, I'll have to, there's a lot of spaces where I'm having to get in there with a brush and just sort of paint it roughly, approximately, and hope nobody looks too carefully under his armpits, for example. But, you know, it would have been just too much work to paint it in sub-assemblies. That would have been painful as well, keeping track of everything. Yeah, so these are in the works. So, since there was no mail call this week, nothing new arrived in the box, I need to pick out something from storage to paint, and I decided to pick a wild card this time. I've been painting a lot of monsters, a lot of Reaper figures. How about some characters, some non-Reaper miniatures characters? And I found these Dark Sword minis I had lying around that are... Two of them are from the Larry Elmore line, reproducing paintings he did. And two more are just kind of in the same style. Chick in Chainmail and Classic Female Barbarian. Are they're called? And I know, chainmail bikinis are not realistic, and they are sexist. And yes, I know. But the heart wants what the heart wants. I think that it's fun. I like painting skimpily clad females sometimes. Just as a break from all the realism, you know? So, I'm going to start prepping these, and let's see where I get by next week. So, that was this week's episode, drawn to a conclusion. Hope you liked it. If you did, click like, comment, share, subscribe, if you haven't done so. And I'll see you again in a week. Till then, Dakian is signing off.